This radio host took his job to the extreme and it cost him everything. In 1923, Norman Newsman began his career as a radio host in Tumbleweed, Kansas. By the year 1956, he was now a local celebrity in his small town that had a population of 17 people. The town once had a large population of 203 people when Norman first came into town, but slowly dropped over the decades. Throughout those decades, crazy and mysterious occurrences took place on the people living in Tumbleweed. From people having gone missing to a man being found inside a can of tuna. Fortunately, Norman Newsman with his golden voice was there to report it all on his popular radio show that came on at 6 p.m. But as time went on, there was less and less for Norman to talk about, because not much was going on due to the lack of people. That was when day by day the population would decrease by one person until there was only 2 people left. One of those people being Norman, and the other, a 72-year-old lady who lived alone named Brittany. At 6 p.m. on February 30th, 1956, Brittany would turn on her radio to listen to the broadcast hosted by Norman. He would quickly state that this would be his last show ever because there was no point of talking to nobody. 5 seconds of silence would go over the radio. That was when he would silently whisper, "Don't think I forgot about you, Brittany, and maybe next time you should keep your back door locked. This is the last man you want to see on the 4th of July." In the small town of Goobersville, Indiana, there ruled a mayor named Hugh Mongoose. He was known to be a hothead with a short temper and had a strange tradition every 4th of July. During the fireworks show, he would pull a name out of a raffle and strap that person to the biggest firework to end the show. Mayor Mongoose started this tradition in 1893 when he first became mayor, and in the year 1934, Hugh was now 96 years old. He was still going strong with the tradition, always stating that it was a sacrifice he was willing to make. On July 4th, 1934, Hugh would draw the ticket from the raffle as he usually would. But this time, after looking down at the ticket, he would take a big gulp and his hands would begin to tremble. He would stand there in silence for over 7 minutes on stage, when finally someone in the large crowd would come up on stage and take the ticket from the mayor. They quickly noticed the name on the ticket read, Hugh Mongoose. The man on the stage told the mayor that he is not above the law. The mayor would quickly respond in a sinister tone, "But I am the law." Someone in the crowd would yell that this is the part where you run away. The mayor would jump off stage and begin running through the town square. He would eventually trip and fall over and would quickly be caught by his townspeople soon after. They would restrain the mayor and strap him to the 150-pound firework. The fuse in the firework would be lit, and right before it was set off, the mayor would whisper under his breath, "Oh, poop." Milliseconds later, the firework would fly 700 feet into the air before finally lighting up the sky. No trace of Hugh Mongoose was ever found besides his infamous top hat. This man was missing for over 2 years, and when he returned to his family, they quickly realized something was horribly wrong. In 1939, Howie Dewitt was working as a coal miner in West Virginia to support his wife and kids. One day, while working, Howie would slip and fall down a shaft inside the coal mine, and after several rescue attempts, there was nothing more they could do. His family would be devastated from the news, but would have to move on without him. When in 1941, a group of coal miners would come across a man stumbling around inside the coal mine. They would ask the man if his name was Howie, and he said, "That is I," in a soft tone. In disbelief, they quickly rushed him to the local hospital, and he was returned to his very surprised and shocked family. Howie would return to his home after 2 years, but when his children saw him, they were terrified of him, and he would barely acknowledge them or his wife, not even saying a word the entire time or showing any emotion. He would sit down on the couch in front of the TV and stare at the television for hours even though it was turned off. He would eventually fall asleep on the couch. His wife would eventually walk up to him to wake him up for dinner. That was when she noticed stitches surrounding his face that looked abnormal. She would then look down at his right hand and saw all 5 of his fingers. But Howie lost his pinky in a coal mining accident 7 years prior. This famous talk show host had a dark obsession. In 1958, Phil McCracken would be thrown into the spotlight after his late-night show would take off in popularity due to his witty personality and unique style of talking to his guest. But after a few months on air, fans started to notice that the guests almost seemed lifeless, and that Phil was always doing most of the talking. They also thought it was weird that he sat so close to his guest and was practically giving them no space at all. There would also be many complaints from his guests' family members, because after being on the show they were never seen or heard from again. When confronted by investigators, Phil would say that he gives all his guests a free paid vacation after appearing on his show, and that's where they probably were. The police would believe him, and Phil would even sign autographs for them too. While filming an episode in late 1958, something seemed very off with the guest, even to the point that the crowd was getting concerned. When all of a sudden the guest would fall over, and one of the audience members who was a trained physician would begin CPR on the guest, he would quickly realize that the man on the ground was barely even human at all. That's when he realized the man on the ground was more puppet than man. This man was pure evil. Back in 1952, there was a privately owned train station that went by the name the Bipolar Express. It went from New York City to San Diego, and it was very cheap to purchase a ticket. Many people in the lower class could travel from one side of the country to the other for less than $1. But there was one major issue: many of the passengers would be reported missing by their family members after never arriving to their destination. The owner and conductor of the train, Thomas Hanksmith, would be questioned by the FBI. It would be discovered that over 500 people had gone missing over the course of 7 years while riding his train. After 18 hours of interrogation, Thomas would finally confess and agree to take them to where the missing passengers were. Thomas would lead them to a secluded area in northern Colorado, to a nearby mountain that had train tracks leading through it. From the outside, it looked like a normal mountain, but when the investigators were brought inside by Thomas, they quickly realized that it was no ordinary mountain. What they saw that day caused both of the FBI agents to retire soon after. And as for Thomas, he would be placed inside a maximum security prison, only to escape 3 years later, never to be seen again. The tragic story of the Elephant Man will leave you in tears. In 1892, a traveling circus rolled into the town of Lawless City, Louisiana. At the time, a man named Doug Graves worked diligently as a gravedigger in the local cemetery. Known for his quiet demeanor and strong work ethic, Doug had lived a life marked by hardship and ridicule. Born in 1855, his mother and uncle's marriage dissolved shortly after his birth, leaving him in the care of his mother. From an early age, Doug was subjected to mockery because of his unusual appearance, earning him the cruel nickname, the Elephant Man. One night, while on a graveyard shift, Doug noticed the distant lights and sounds of the circus. Curiosity piqued, he decided to abandon his duties and sneak into the circus grounds. However, his attempt at stealth was unsuccessful when security apprehended him and brought him before the circus owner, Zoltan Pepper. Zoltan, recognizing an opportunity, presented Doug with an ultimatum: participate in an upcoming act or face charges for trespassing. Faced with little choice, Doug reluctantly agreed to take part in the performance. He was given a quick briefing on his role, which seemed simple enough. He was to lie in a rectangular box while the magician performed his act. As the time for the act approached, Doug and the magician stepped onto the stage to a roar of applause. The Elephant Man crawled into the box, and the magician began the act. The goal was to create the appearance of sawing the box in half and then magically putting it back together with Doug unharmed inside. The magician sawed the box in half, drawing gasps and cheers from the audience. Standing triumphantly between the two halves, the magician bowed, then proceeded to reassemble the box. However, as the performance reached its climax, the unexpected happened. When the box was opened, a deafening silence fell over the crowd, quickly followed by horrified screams.